right, my babies, we're actually doing this. And today would be the first time I record. Within the next hour, basically, I'll finish this recording and we'll see how far we've gotten. Welcome to, I'm guessing, Business Analysis 101. Keep in mind, it's for everybody to know, I'm not a business analyst. But I took this course, and I even didn't take the exam because I didn't want to pay the extra money, I guess. Or just a big part of me still doesn't want to study for it. The entire concept of business analysis is just kind of like uh, they call it a tool set. And naturally, when we imagine tools, we imagine like screwdrivers, maybe we imagine generators, we imagine engines. Fuck, you can even imagine a guitar because a guitar is a tool to play music. But it's a tool set, a mental tool set for you to be able to assess and analyze things differently. So, table of contents. I'm assuming this chapter, at the very least, we're going to be basically going through the purpose of the BABOK guide. The BABOK is basically business analysis book, right? Body of knowledge. Business analysis body of knowledge. BABOK. And that's the book basically that's over the past 20, 30 years people have been basically going. So there's an introduction to business analysis. What is business analysis? Who is a business analyst, and a structure of the guide. And then there's the key concepts of business analysis in chapter 2. And then chapter 3, business analysis planning and monitoring. Business chapter 4, elicitation and collaboration. That's cute because it deals a lot with the interactions we have with human beings. Chapter 5, requirements and lifecycle management. This is interesting because this is where we enter the planning state. As in, like, we're taking the information that we have, we're connecting them a certain kind of way, or we're making decisions to how we might be able to approach. This is basically how. So trace requirements, maintain requirements, prioritize requirements, assess requirements, approve requirements. Because most of the time when we're interacting, especially like, what are we trying to solve? What's the problem that we're trying to handle and deal with? There's a lot of missing misconceptions, and especially when it comes to communication, most people kind of like work with a business analyst because they themselves are not very articulate. So that's basically how we kind of like structure everything. Strategy analysis, analyze current state, define future state, assess risks, define change strategy. Like one, we're looking at what we want to do and then where we're going to be doing it or for what reason we're going to be doing it. That's chapter 6. Chapter 7, requirements analysis and design definition. So lifecycle management and requirement. So requirements, lifecycle management versus requirements analysis are two different things. But ultimately, like figuring out the requirements, and then after we kind of like decide on a strategy towards them, we have to kind of like analyze them and how we can kind of like whatever we're building is basically connected to it. We have to verify, validate, define requirements architecture, define design options, analyze potential value and recommended solutions. And then we have to evaluate, solutions evaluation. We have to measure solution performance. That's basically after we kind of like create the solution and we submit it. So now we're discussing probably after we finish the work of building something. Now we have to basically how we're getting feedback, how it's actually interacting, how it's working, or how it is actually like what's the word? Uh, how well it's doing, basically. And basically we start kind of like interacting with them. Underlying competencies, analytical thinking and problem solving. I think right now we came back to us, behavioral characteristic, business knowledge, communication skills, interactional skills, tools and technology. This is us basically now, how we are actually going to be reflecting on ourselves in terms of how we're actually going to be figuring out these kinds of things. Because remember, like here, they're telling us what we need to do and they're describing them. Here, how we reflect on ourselves. And chapter 10 is all the techniques. There are many techniques, and funny enough, it's really just like there are some things where you actually need to. There are some things that are more economic. There are some things that are more software. There are some things that are more commercial. There are some things that are a lot very personalized. Because sometimes when you're analyzing a problem, it could just be like lack of communication. So your solution has to kind of like connect people in a way for them not to be able to, for them to be able to perform better. Who the fuck knows? So all of these are basically like different kind of stuff that we could actually use as a business analyst or recommend as a business analyst. Tools of actually achieving our goal. Fuck man, a whooping 150 something pages. Nice. And then perspectives, chapter 11, and voila. It only took us techniques to task mapping, appendix A, B, C, D. This is probably just like telling us about stuff. And it's a 514-page book. A business process management perspective is basically the last thing we kind of like learn as a teaching, and then everything else is basically appendixes and contributors. Oh, sweet. So I think the total could probably just be, yeah. So basically, this acceptance criteria is just describing certain kinds of words. So we'll probably be like referring back to it every once in a while in order for us to like understand what we're interacting with and doing. Because like a lot of terminology specific to that. Like I learned that when I was actually doing when I was learning software engineering. Like this, the first thing that you actually have to interact with, or at least the first thing that you have to like create references in when it comes to your mind is the language they speak. And sometimes you feel like you know what they're talking about, but the reality is there's a lot more like nuances and details when it comes to voila. This as well is still telling us about random shits. I hope this is enough. The guide, the BABOK guide contains description of general accepted principles, major changes and release includes. They're talking about the book. Who the fuck cares? Yay! Introduction. So we've been doing this for about 10 minutes, by the way, because I've been reading and trying to explain whatever it is. Remember, this is just because I wanted to do this and I wanted to do this out loud and explain some random shit for myself, and I figured I'd make a video out of it and post it online. So I love you guys. This should be fun. I am literally reading a book of 400 something pages out loud. So, a guide to business analysis body knowledge is the globally recognized standard, blah, blah, blah. You guys are very important. The purpose of BABOK guide, the primary purpose of BABOK guide is to define the profession of business analysis and provide a set of commonly accepted practices. So naturally, business analysis is a form of thinking that has been documented scientifically. So right now, this book is telling us is allowing us to approach thinking in a more scientific way. As practitioners discuss and define the skills necessary for effective perform business analysis work. Guide also helps people who work with the employ business analysts to understand the skills and knowledge they should expect from a skilled practitioner. Business analysis is a broad profession in which business analysts might perform work, so blah, 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 blah. The 6 knowledge areas of BABOK. Here, they're just kind of like talking about like why this actually matters. So like whoever doesn't have the book, man, comment on the video because when I post it, I'll just fucking send you this PDF and you can read it yourself. Why the fuck not, man? I love you guys. So the 6 knowledge areas of the BABOK guide: business analysis, planning and monitoring, elicitation and collaboration, requirements lifecycle management, strategy analysis, requirements analysis and design definition, and solution evaluation. I'm assuming these are the 6. I don't know, I don't want to count. Describe the practice of business analysis that is applied within the boundaries of a project and throughout the enterprise. So these are basically the 6 stages of work that anyone has to do. Actually, the first stage is they very much follow each other because like the first stage is business analysis, planning and monitoring, and then elicitation and collaboration. And then elicitation and collaboration is just getting information from the people you're working with. Requirements lifecycle is where you kind of like have to provide input based on that information. And then strategy analysis is basically like assessing which strategy works. Requirements analysis and design definition, you go back to that and you kind of like define things in more detail. That's why I think where we start working with like software teams, if we're working with software, or the sales teams, if we're working with salespeople, or all that good stuff. And the solution evaluation is finally like evaluating the solution and how it works and how effective it is, and just kind of like reflecting on our decision-making process. So yay! Look at us, we got to a first figure. Business analysis beyond projects. All right, so pre-project, project, post-project, rationale, delivery, benefits, strategy analysis, RADD, and solution evaluation. This is kind of like the pre-project is how we basically start, and then that's probably information building, and then the project of actually doing it, and then after the project we reflect on it. Rationale is basically reasoning, and that's something that we have to consider as well, like how we are approaching things, other than what information we're getting, how we're approaching the information. So I think these are the stages and how we actually move through them. The delivery and the benefits, because like we're actually doing something to maybe make work more efficient, maybe make them more money, maybe lower them costs, who the fuck knows. Delivery is how we deliver. Like it doesn't matter if you do a beautiful project. There are multiple websites that are amazing online that solve a lot of problems, but people just don't give a fuck. So it's a very important thing to always consider, like the people you're working with and how they're actually going to like receive what you're trying to do. That's basically, let's call it that. RADD, just like I just mentioned before, so requirement analysis and design definition. And solution evaluation, evaluating the solution. So, hey, what is business analysis? Business analysis is the practice of enabling change in an enterprise by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. Business analysis enables an enterprise to articulate needs and rationale for change and to design and describe solutions that can deliver value. Business analysis is performed on a variety of initiatives within the enterprise initiatives Oof, within an enterprise. Initiatives may be strategic, tactical, or operational. Let's reread this. Business analysis is performed on a variety of initiatives. So it could be anything from the sales force all the way to the financial like section. We don't fucking know because every business might have a certain requirement, and as a business analyst, you have to kind of like look at what needs to be done, or at the very least the outcome, and figure out a way to do it. If somebody comes to you and goes like, "Hey, I want more money," you could be like, "Okay, we can increase sales, we can lower costs, we can like change the operational basically like structure for people to harmoniously deliver more, so you actually have space for more business." Who the fuck knows? But there are many ways to approach things. Initiatives may be strategic, tactical, or operational. Amazing. Business analysis may be performed within the boundaries of a project or throughout enterprise evolution and continuous improvement. So it's either one thing we have to analyze within like certain limitations because there's a project that needs to be done that they need it to be successful, or we're actually operating on a different level where the entity is actually growing, the enterprise is growing, and what we have to do, what we would want to do is basically like support with the dynamic of growth from an external point of view or from a business analyst point of view, because maybe they want to reach a new market for their growth. So we have to start, we consider a lot more things within that state. Because that's basically how like our job is to see things that other people don't, or at the very least to connect things that other people don't necessarily are have the capability to it. And what we do is we just structure whatever it is that's kind of like either happening or needs to happen in a way that allows people to kind of connect the lines, or basically allows us to point to the lines that need to be connected, and the other fuckers can actually make a decision. Working with clients is not the best. That's why a business analyst's first job is to be able to communicate, patient, super zen, uber Buddhistic. Very much you have to be Buddhistic, as in like, yes, of course you are right. You're paying me money. Now, do you want to make money? Naturally, you have to say it in a way. Yeah, yeah. We're gonna have a lot of these, so I hope you guys enjoy. So business analysis can be performed from a diverse array of perspectives. Wow, tell me again how we can approach a problem from in many ways. Yes. The guide describes several of these perspectives. There's agile, business intelligence, information technology, business architecture, business process management. Like I said, so like these are basically like from an intelligence perspective, like maybe they need uh, a, a person that knows stuff in a certain field in order to support them in their move. Information technology is probably data. They're lacking data and a way to collect data, or maybe the data they're collecting is not necessarily like supporting what they want to do. Business architecture is the whole business is operating maybe in an old way and needs to be kind of like revamped or architected, reorchestrated. Is a much better word, yes. Business process management, as in like the processes of how business kind of translates. You know, like there's a manager and there's like the people working under them, and then there are salespeople and operation managers and how they connect. That's the business process. It could be something as simple as like production as well. Remember, I am not a business analyst. I do not have a certificate. I have experience in entrepreneurship and fucking up. I have a lot of opinions that are based on how I think, and I took this course and I finished this course in order for me to kind of understand the scientific way of doing things. So we're reading this book together in order for us to understand things differently and for me to kind of create that like golden thread of information that goes from A to Z. So anytime I'm thinking, hey man, this is a project that I would want to work, what you'll have in your head is you will understand that there are a set of tools that you could use, and then basically one Google away, you jump, you figure it out, and voila, you're analyzing business. Get it? Business analysis, analyzing business. Nobody gets my humor. So, a perspective can be thought of as a lens through which the business analysis practitioner views their work activities based on the current context. Perspective, financial perspective, personal perspective, cultural perspective, scientific perspective, fictional perspective. I'm a big anime fan, man. And if I'm going to plan my company, I know exactly how I'm, not if I am, I'm working on a startup. That's why I took this course as well. So my company is going to be operated the same way a ship is operated at sea. Well, not a ship, more of a pirate ship crew, basically. Yeah, that comes with a lot more trust. But anyways, one of many perspectives may apply to an initiative, and the perspectives outlined in the BABOK guide do not represent all contexts of business. Voila, even a guide of 400 fucking pages are telling us that even what we tell you is not the whole idea, which means you get to freely consider shit and apply them, provided you're successful, or at the very least, provided you're thoughtful that the people that hired you are not gonna go get screwed after dealing with you. So that's the stuff that I want you guys to kind of like. This is just you basically having the ability to be versatile in your approach. Let's go with that. Guide. The Baba Guide does not represent all contexts for business analysis or the complete set of business analysis disciplines. Who is business analysis? Who is a business analyst? Sorry, I'm getting excited. A business analyst is any person who performs business analysis tasks described in the Baba Guide. See what I'm saying? A business analyst is a person who describes any task within this book, which means if you're naturally like analytical, you're not technically a business analyst. What the fuck? 10 years of experience building companies and I'm not a business analyst? Yeah, you have to pay a couple of $100 for an exam, bitch. And that's basically how I met your mother. I don't know. No matter the job, title, or organizational role, business analysts are responsible for discovering, synthesizing and analyzing information. We have to find information that people haven't noticed. We have to take that information and basically like I love the term destructure. They're using synthesizing here. I think synthesizing makes it sound a lot more like like if you take a block of concrete, synthesizing it is basically like maybe turning it to sand or something and discovering the molecular activity. Well, business analysis is a bit deep, so synthesizing maybe works. But for me, I use the term destructure because what you could do is take the block into smaller pieces, and then you get to see small pebbles and concrete and air and sand and water and all the stuff that work together with it. And then basically you could actually destructure that. So technically you're synthesizing the whole thing, but you destructure it in various parts. So my way is better. And analyzing information from a variety of sources within an enterprise, including tools, processes, documentation, stakeholders. The business analyst is responsible for eliciting the actual needs of stakeholders, which frequently involves investigating and clarifying their expressed desires. Yeah, so here is that's something beautiful actually. And I want you guys to like understand one thing that is very important when it comes to business analysis. Continuing. So One thing I want you guys to understand when it comes to business analysis is this. The people who hire you have finally come to terms that they need somebody to figure out an issue or are smart enough to realize that they're incapable of actually moving forward without some form of expertise. Now, you're probably not going to be the expert that moves things, but you're going to be the person or the expert that finds the movers that are required to actually have things happen. So your work is basically with people that have an idea or a vague idea of an outcome. And your job is to create the storyline in reality for them to be able to like move forward. So business analysts play a role in aligning the designed and delivered solutions with the needs of stakeholders. The activities that business analysis performs, notice here, the needs of stakeholders. Because you're gonna get people that are telling you this is what I want, and after 1 month, they kind of like go through some emotional rampage, discover their wife is cheating, realize they're impotent. I have no idea what they might go through, but it could be a fucked up day, or it could be just a day where he didn't have his coffee in the right way he loves it or she loves it. And you had a meeting and then everything changes. And it's your job to handle that shit like a business analyst would. Naturally, you're gonna have to analyze this shit before getting to analyzing the thing he hired you to do or she hired you to do. I say he because my experience with men has been horrible. We're emotional beings, and most of us don't even realize when we're overwhelmed. So we power through and we just take it out on everyone and end up losing money or shit like this. So activities that business analysts perform include understanding enterprise problems and goals, basic, analyzing needs and solutions, basic, devising strategies, basics, driving change. Driving change is interesting. Why? Because you figured out all the things that need to happen. Driving change, you have to go to the people that have been consistently doing something a certain kind of way, and you have to help them. I want to say help. I don't like the word help, but you have to guide them, not even guide them, drive them into doing things differently. A good business analyst finds a peaceful way to do it because anytime you threaten somebody, you're touching a part of their ego, and then most people will either crack, and you don't want people without any will of their own, while the rest of the people kind of like just retaliate and fuck things up on purpose. Other common job titles for people who perform business analysis include business architect, of course, because the strategy you create or the structure you create for the business to operate on is basically you being a business architect. You took the information, you had opinions, you challenged these opinions, and you just create something. Business systems analyst, which means you're taking how the business works and you're analyzing it. Fuck yeah. Data analyst, a lot of data, a lot of information, sometimes legit just data for you to be like, this is where we're doing wrong or this. It's fun, super fun. Enterprise analyst, management consultant, process analyst, product manager, product owner, requirements engineer, and systems analyst. Yeah, so business analyst as a term or as a word or as a label is basically just a whole bunch of shit. There's not one thing you do. And the beauty of it is no project is the same as the other, which kind of gives you a whole imposter syndrome. But that's the thing that you always have to think things in a different way. You have to process your thoughts and the information and the actions you're doing in a different way. So you're not going to be like one of those mom and dad stores where you just go welcome people and tell them to fuck off at the end of the day, and once a week just order your fucking stuff for people to come and buy. Every single day probably is something new, some actionable activity, or something that just makes you feel sexy. Hey, whatever like blows your bubble, pops you, no, yeah, something like that. Structure of the guide. Core content of BABOK guide is composed of business analysis tasks organized into knowledge areas. Business analysis book of knowledge, yes. Knowledge areas are a collection of logically but not sequentially related tasks. These tasks describe specific activities that accomplish the purpose of their associated knowledge area. So here, I think these are the things that basically they were talking about, because these pre-project rationale strategy analysis, out of the six that we read here somewhere, right? There's elicitation collaboration, business analysis planning and monitoring, requirements lifecycle management. It's not really happening behind each other, but you kind of have to jump between like some testing, some creation, and it's a very iteration based approach, because you always have to kind of like make a decision, and it doesn't really have to be the decision that changes everything. But you always have to make a decision, take a step back, and then basically see if that decision is the right one or not, because you need an objective outlook. That's why they hired you, for an objective outlook. The people that need a business analyst are people that are so into what they're doing that they can't see what's going on. So they hire an outsider. Business analysis. Perspective sections from the extended content of BABOK. Okay, so business analysis key concepts. Define the key terms needed to understand all other content, concepts, ideas with the BABOK guide. Underlying competencies provide a description of the behaviors, characteristics, knowledge, and personal qualities that support the effective practice of business analysis. So here is our personal training to become a business analyst, because we have to be able to do business analysis. We are business analysts because we're going to take a business and we need a certain train of thought, a certain process. And these are the tools. Like this guide will teach us about these kinds of stuff and will allow us to kind of like do business analysis a lot more effectively and efficiently. Underlying competencies, so you can actually get to know yourself better. Techniques, these are the skills and the tools basically, and how we use the tools, and where and when and who and what and why. Really? Where, when, who, what, how? Where, when, who, what, how? Four W's and an H. Provide the means for BABOK business analysis tasks. The techniques described guides are intended to cover most common and widespread techniques practiced within the business analysis community. So perspectives describe various views of business analysis. This book will also show us like different like outlooks on how to see things, or at the very least explores different ways to look at things. Working from various points of view, better perform business analysis tasks. This is all very not, I don't know if it's repetitive because I actually took the course, or I don't know if it's repetitive because I actually like do this stuff on a daily basis. But hey, it's fun to actually read it, because now that I'm saying it out loud, I get to hear myself and I get to experience some form of energy while doing it instead of kind of like being stuck in my head. So key concepts, business analysis key concept chapter provides a basic understanding of the central ideas necessary for understanding the BABOK guide. I don't know how you see how articulate they are on the many levels of describing something. That's basically what business analysts do, specifically because clarity is very important, and not for you, because you might know what the fuck's going on, but the people that are listening to you need to also understand. And it's not because they're dumb or that they're not smart or anything, it's just because they're seeing the world from a different place. So simpler and clearer you explain things, the easier it becomes for you to kind of like allocate what happens and how the information is taken. So the chapter consists of business analysis core concepts, model, key terms, requirements, classification schema, stakeholders, requirements, and design. Are they describing in this just basically? No, this is a full chapter that we're going through. All right, we're still kind of like getting into the chapter. So knowledge areas. Knowledge areas represent areas of specific business analysis expertise that encompass several tasks. The six knowledge areas are business analysis planning and monitoring. Business analysis planning and monitoring describes the tasks that business analysts perform to organize and coordinate the efforts of business analysts and stakeholders. We're basically we have to do tasks in order to coordinate between the people that need to do the job and the people that asked us to do the job. These tasks produce outputs that are used as key inputs and guidelines for the other tasks throughout the BABOK guide. So each knowledge area includes a visual representation of its inputs and outputs. So elicitation and collaboration describes the task that business analysts perform to prepare for and conduct elicitation activities and confirm the results obtained. It also describes the communication with stakeholders. Once the business analysis information is assembled, an ongoing collaboration with them throughout the business analysis activities. That was a mouthful. All right, so let's read it again. Solicitation and collaboration. Basically, you have to get information that you have to understand properly what they want, and so you elicit information. Sometimes, if you ask a question, they think they answered you, but they didn't. So you kind of like squirm around with different questions in order to get the one piece of information that they missed, or they probably didn't know. By the way, I remember when I first started my own business, I was oblivious to half the shit that I thought I knew what I wanted, what what was happening. And ultimately, it's when you make a mistake you realize that some mistakes are expensive. So I hire a professional. Requirements lifecycle describes the tasks that business analysts perform in order to manage and maintain requirements and design information from inception to retirement. So this is basically the requirements is heavy because they might change as we proceed with the project. They might change as the budget dwindles as we go through the budget. They might change as we get more information from different teams that are working on different things because all of these are basically it's like there's a goal that we need to set for ourselves, and that because it's not really close to us, we can't decide from now. So we have to manage the lifetime of the actual requirements, and we have to come back to them and assess if they're good. Inception to retirement. These tasks describe establishing meaningful relations between related requirements and designs, and assessing, analyzing, and gaining consensus on proposed changes to requirements and design, basically. Strategy analysis describes the business analysis work that must be performed to collaborate with stakeholders in order to identify a need for strategic or tactical importance, the business need. So yeah, that's one of the trickiest things to actually get because that is what's going to guide your entire kind of like movement. Once you understand what the business needs or what the actual like what the stakeholders need, then you kind of find yourself like once you actually accept what is needed, then you're able to move forward. But that also kind of like that's where you kind of like start. You're no longer assessing the work. You're assessing how the work is actually getting us closer to finish to closing the deal or finishing our job, basically, which is basically the success of the project or just whatever man the business wants from us. Enable the enterprise to address that need and align the resulting strategy for the change with higher and lower level strategies. Fuck yeah, amazing. So what we're doing here is basically digging deeper, destructuring, synthesizing in order for us to kind of like translate the smaller things that we extracted and find better placements for them so that you're not the only one working, but other people are kind of like doing it. Amazing. Requirements analysis and design definition describes the tasks that business analysts perform to structure and organize requirements, discovering during elicitation activities. Again, elicitation activities, because like that's the information that when you're eliciting information from your stakeholders, you kind of understand, you start understanding what they want, and those basically are the requirements that guide your entire journey. So, specify and model requirements and designs, make decisions basically, create designs on how the requirements could be achieved, validate and verify information. That's actually like, yeah, imagine you're operating on false information, right? Identify solution options that meet business needs. What could be the options? And you can't just pick a solution. You have to have many because you're not the one making the final decision. The people paying you make the final decision. They can always push them for a decision that you think is best without kind of like putting it in their face. And estimate the potential value that could be realized for each solution option. Value, as in whether it's cost, saving, or money, or something like this. This knowledge area covers the incremental and iterative activities ranging from iterative. See, I told you, everything is iteration. Because you kind of have to make a decision and question it from an objective point of view. So iterative activities ranging from the initial concept and exploration of the need through the transformation of those needs into a particular recommended solution. Huh. Fuck, I've been talking a lot. I need some water. But we have, I think, 20 minutes left. Solution evaluation. Who's still with me? Whoever's, no, we have 25 minutes, man. But whoever's still with me on this video, I love you. You are fucking awesome. Now, solution evaluation describes the task that business analysts perform to assess. Notice all of them describes the task, describe the task, describe the business analysis, describes the task, describes the task, describes the task. What the book gives us is basically things to do in order for us to get somewhere. It does not give us a solution, or it doesn't give us, it's not opinionated. It is, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen, right? After this, you can do this. After you get this information, we do this. And it's more like of a scientific methodology that people succeeded with in the past. So it describes the task that business analysts perform to assess the performance of a value delivered by a solution in use by the enterprise, and to recommend removal of barriers or constraints that prevent the full realization of the value. Why did this just like describes the tasks that business analysts perform to assess the performance and the value delivered by a solution in use by the enterprise? Right? So basically we're assessing the performance and the value delivered by a solution. That's one. And to recommend removal of barriers or constraints that prevent the full realization of the value. So basically, when you assess the solution, you kind of realize if the solution is moving efficiently, effectively, or in the wrong direction, probably. And then you basically kind of like you either remove some things for the solution to happen faster, you add some things for it to happen smoother, you kind of like do some trainings here and there for people to interact with it differently. So yeah, this is my favorite diagram about the whole thing. Because I don't know if you noticed, everything's fucking connected. Yes. So, but the beauty of it, I think, is just it starts from, well, I don't know where it starts from, but let's just say, it starts from outside. Elicitation and collaboration. Using that, you can actually kind of like start predicting a solution maybe, and then going back to strategy analysis, this side here. Is there a way I can like highlight color? I can do this? Oh, sweet. This is fucking beautiful. All right, fuck off. Oh no, it has to be on for me to do this. So 1 second. Let me just clear this. How do I clear this, guys? Back? Back? Where did I go? Oh, I went to the previous page. But anyways, let's use a different color. So I think we start here. And then after we start here, what we practically do, oh, okay, so I can actually delete it in the spots. I'll try to double click this one. Oh, I can actually delete it like this. All right, perfect. So elicitation and collaboration, and then from here you kind of go into business analysis, planning, and stuff like this. Because like once you actually get information from here, then you can actually analyze. But from here as well, you get to start getting an idea of what your strategy could be, and you get an idea of what your solution could be. Go for less thickness. And then from business analysis, after elicitation, this one is a lot stronger because then you can go for the what are the requirements you need to start looking at. And then from here, you could actually go to requirements analysis and strategy analysis. Again, remember this is iterative, which means every single time we take a step forward, we have to take a step back and see what we did. And naturally, from here, after we figure out some requirements, we go back to evaluate the solution, and we go back to the analysis of the requirements. And then when we do that, we could actually go back to the strategy, and then from the strategy we go back. It's a fucking shit show, man. It really is just a whole lot of stuff. But anyways, you guys get the gist of things. Tasks. A task is a discrete piece of work that may be performed formally or informally as part of business analysis. As in, there are things that you need to do. This is not all in your head. There are things that you need to do. And the way I see tasks is basically when you, it's a documentation of your work probably, right? So like anytime you're thinking of something, you have to write it down or you have to like establish a way for it to be like transferable to the real world, especially the people you're working with. And then from there, there are actionable points where you actually have to like engage with it. So defines a list of business analysis tasks. The definition of a given task is universally applicable to business analysis efforts, independent of the initiative type. Yeah, so they're saying that task is generic. Yay! A business analyst may perform other activities as assigned by their organization, but these additional activities are not considered to be part of the business analysis profession. I have no idea what that is, but basically they're giving us leeway to go off the grid or off the book to do stuff on our own. But when we do that, we shan't call ourselves business analysts when we're doing them. I have no idea. Again, uh, the guy who taught us was very much every single session would actually open up with, I've been a business analyst list for about 15, 16 years or something like this. And every single time he's doing a task, he feels he's doing a project, he feels like he's going back to point zero. So his entire confidence is the fact that he did projects before. There is no skill set that he holds that he can do it. It's just he can actually think in reference to the actual needs and the projects and the people that he's interacting with. So maybe the skills that he built are communication skills because people are not telling him to fuck off and still want to work with him. And the skills are basically him to be able to like objectively look at what they're trying to do and figure something out. Tasks are grouped into knowledge areas. Business analysts perform tasks from all knowledge areas sequentially, iteratively, or simultaneously. Or simultaneously. Here, it's not and sequentially, iteratively, or simultaneously, as in sequence with each other. Huh. Okay, so iteratively is basically you do something, you take a step back, you do something, you take a step back. Simultaneously, as in doing them together. Sequentially, as in doing one thing, then doing another, and doing another, and then kind of like coming back to them. They used or here specifically to show us that you can do whatever the fuck you want, but as long as you're understanding that how you're doing it is what matters. This guide does not prescribe a process or an order in which tasks are performed. They reminded us. This is the fourth, fifth time they remind us that this guide is basically anything you can find on Google, but it's just pages behind each other. Tasks may be performed in an order as long as the necessary inputs to a task are present. A business analysis initiative may start with any task, although likely candidates are analyze current state or measure solution performance. Task may be performed in an order. I'm repeating it. As long as the necessary inputs to a task are present. So the tasks require information and input. So as long as the input is there, you get to choose the order you want to perform them. Perfect. A business analysis initiative may start with any task, although likely candidates are analyze current state or measure solution performance. All right, so they're telling us that the best way to start is from analyze current states, as in where are we, or measure solution performance, and how is this solution actually performing. These are the likely candidates because most of business analysis is we're doing something that's not working or we want to do something, right? So this makes sense. They're kind of like highlighting the possibilities or like the ones that actually are more probable. Each task in the BABOK guide is presented in the following format: purpose, description, inputs, elements, guides, guidelines and tools, techniques, stakeholders, and outputs. The purpose section provides a short description of the reason for a business analyst to perform a task. Oh, so anytime there's a task, we have to actually put these one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, these 8 points, we have to describe them for each task. Why is this task important? Describe the task. The description section explains in greater detail what the task is, why it is performed, and what it should accomplish. So here, for example, I was talking earlier, like reading this book is literally is not you understanding what this book is about, but creating reference points. So right now, for example, anytime I'm going to be thinking into the future and I'm going to be like, I probably need to do this. I would actually have a thought that says, okay, why do you want to do this? Describe this that you want to do. What are the things needed for it to be done, which is the inputs. The inputs section is a list of inputs for the task or information consumed or transformed to produce an output. Notice it's never one thing, it's always many things. Why? Because business analyst is versatile, is fluid, is sexy. Information analysis for a task to begin, they may be explicitly generated outside the scope of business analysis or generated by a business analyst's task. So maybe another task generated something that goes into another task. Depends on how smart you are. And if anything, everything for you becomes a task. I do this so that that could be done later or something like this. Inputs that are generated outside of the business analysis effort are identified with the qualifier external in the inputs list. Okay, so you say external specifically because that is something that probably needs validation or verification, something. There's no assumption that the presence of an input means the associated deliverables is complete or in its final state. The input only needs to be sufficiently complete to allow successive work to begin. There is no perfection, baby. Give me something to do something else, and if it doesn't work, it's easier for me to go back and figure out why this didn't work than to actually just consistently try to make something out as perfect or complete it in a way that makes me feel perfection, because ultimately what we're doing, we're creating something new, or at the very least, we're trying to be creative in how we're doing something that's supposed to have been like already done, or that shouldn't be there because like whoever hired you should have been successful, but it wasn't. So your goal is to be creative in finding a solution that's optimal, or at the very least in like fixing this issue so that they don't have to deal with it. The input section includes a visual representation of the input and outputs and other tasks, and use outputs as well as guidelines and tools listed in the task. All right, so anytime there's an input, the expectations for outputs, you have to write them down or something. Elements. The elements section describes the key concepts that are needed to understand how to perform the task. Elements are not mandatory as part of performing a task, and their usage might depend upon the business analysis approach. That's fun. Let's read it again. Element solution describes the key concepts that are needed to understand how to perform a task. That's basically you kind of like writing an outline of how you think it should be done. Guidelines and tools. The guidelines and tools section lists resources that are required to transform the input into output. Sometimes you have to make these decisions, right? Because the way you assess the way you assess something or the way you approach something might not be relevant to what you're trying to get out of it. So guidelines and tools are basically a decision you make. Can include outputs of other tasks. You could actually see like what you produced in other tasks and how you could actually use them here. That is a bit more detailed, and I think this guidelines and tools is more specific because if you're working with teams, then that's the documented version of how the team would understand what to use in order to give you a proper analysis. Remember, like whatever you're writing, you're interacting with others, you're communicating with others. So this is basically a clarified version of what needs to be done and all the details and how basically it could be done as best as possible, or what are the things that need to be done in order for it to be considered a valid task or completed, I guess. Techniques section has a list of techniques that can be used to perform the business analysis task. I think the senior business analyst does that, but like anyone could make it decide which techniques to use. That's what we're gonna get through, I think, in like strategy analysis or something like this. Yay, we're at page 17. Stakeholders. The stakeholders section is composed of a generic list of stakeholders who are likely to participate in performing. So stakeholders are practically the people that are going to give you information, whether it is the people you're working to create a solution for, or whether it's the person the manager who hired you, or it's the owner, or the fundraiser, or whatever, the guy who gave you money, or it could be just your fucking team, man. Outputs. The output section describes the results produced by performing the task. Outputs are created, transformed, and or changed in state as a result of the successful completion of a task. An output may be a deliverable or be a part of a larger deliverable. The form of an output is dependent on type of initiative, underway, standards adopted by the organization. The form of an output is dependent on the type of initiative underway, standards adopted by the organization. So here, basically, I think we're going through like the organizational code or like what do they call it? Not code of conduct, but not code of conduct, ethics, values, policy, and how they do things. Because ultimately, I could generate an output that doesn't fit the company culture or the company vision, or I don't know, I could generate an output that doesn't fit the company market. Who the fuck knows? So, best judgment of the business analyst is to is to an appropriate way to address the information needs of key stakeholders. So, like we always have to use that as reference because we have to see the people who hired us, how they are, what they're trying to do, and for the love of God, man, communicate. As with inputs, an instance of a task may be completed without an output being in its final state, simply because it's enough for you to go see something else and then come back to it or something. Tasks that use a specific output do not necessarily have to wait for its completion for work within the task to begin. Tasks that use a specific output do not necessarily have to wait for its completion for work within the task to begin. Yeah, so if you're waiting for a specific output, why output, not input? Tasks that use a specific output do not necessarily have to wait. What's the specific output? I don't know, I'll figure it out later. 1.4.4 underlying competencies. Underlying competencies reflect knowledge, skills, behaviors, characteristics, and personal qualities that help one successfully perform the role of the business analyst. These underlying competencies are not unique to the business analysis profession. However, successful execution of tasks and techniques is often dependent on proficiency in one or more underlying competencies. Underlying competencies have the following structure: purpose, definition, effectiveness measures. Woohoo. Purpose. Purpose section describes why it's beneficial for a business analyst to have these underlying competencies. So basically, this here, underlying competencies, is also a segment that we kind of like have to fulfill. Specifically, I think for like a successful here they mentioned. However, successful execution of tasks and techniques is often dependent on proficiency in one of those. So, because some business analysts might be very good at financial analysis, for example. So, if you give them something human oriented or basically operational oriented, they're probably not going to have the strongest competencies. I'm not saying they're incompetent, calm the fuck down. I'm saying they probably don't have the underlying competencies to get the task done better or basically make the best out of it. So every task will actually have like competencies that are requirements of it. So like the business analyst that's going to take this task, remember, we're probably working with a team of like 5, 10 people maybe or something like this. So you'd want to handle the tasks that the people best fit or the people that are kind of like aspiring to be in that side, right? Because there's always people that are like not really good, for example. I'm going to use finance because like that's very specific. Finance, accounting, marketing, like these are kind of like the different fields. Uh, Communication, human resources, all of these are kind of like specific competencies. But sometimes you have people that want to switch or want to experience something new, so they're actually driven, right, thinking that way, trying to like reassess how they approach things. So who the hell knows, man? You can give those tasks to them. Purpose, definition, effectiveness measures, and that's basically how you assess you're writing these in order for people to like you're writing the purpose of the section. The purpose basically describes why it's beneficial for business analysts to have this underlying competency. The definition this section describes the skills and expertise involved in the application of this competency. Or describes why these skills are necessary, for example, right? Effectiveness measures section describes how to determine whether a person is demonstrating skills in this underlying competencies. And describes how to determine whether a person. Yeah. So basically, the KPIs. KPIs are what's the actual key KPIs abbreviation? Key performance indicators. So the key performance indicators of the people. All right, I'm almost done with chapter one. Yes, I'm almost done with chapter one. So amazing. We got one chapter out of the fucking way today. I still have two things, techniques and perspectives. Techniques provide additional information on ways that a task may be performed. There's a list of techniques that the BABOK provides. There are multiple techniques that may be applied alternatively or in conjunction with other techniques to accomplish a task. Business analysts are encouraged to modify existing techniques or engineer new ones to best suit their situation and their goals and the task they perform. Again, like this is basically an outline. So create reference points in your heads and you can come back to this book or just be fucking creative on your own, man. I know you can do it. I love you. Techniques have the following structure: purpose, description, elements, and usage consideration. Now, naturally, they're going to explain. The purpose of the technique, the purpose section describes what the technique is used for and the circumstances under which it's most likely to be applicable. Remember, what we're doing is we're highlighting what is required, what are the requirements for this task. So from when it comes to the people, when it comes to the task to be done, when it comes to the inputs and the outputs, like all these things, we're kind of like, what we're doing is what do they call it? We're connecting the, I'm thinking of a chain, right? Like the actual chain that you use to kind of like hold the boat or something. Like these chains are connected to each other, like steel connected to itself. But like what they're doing is they're basically like, this is a task, this is how it needs to be done, this is how the process should probably go, these are the inputs that we want, these are the people that would be able to like get this task done properly, and these are the techniques that we'll use for this task to be done properly. And after that, the perspectives and how to look at this task and what are the ways that we can see them. Naturally, if you're working at a team, there's juniors, seniors, and all that shit. So some people might take the heavy lifting and actually make these decisions. And on the other side, you'll learn from them and you'll explore things differently on your own. Because here they're saying encourage. They encourage people to kind of like do their own shit. It's right here. See it? Are encouraged to modify. Huh? Here. Let's do this. Oh, and yeah, this part here. Huh? I could have done this from the beginning. Nice. It's beautiful software, bro. Amazing. All right. Business analysts are encouraged to modify. Let's just kill this one and let's keep this one. This one's nice. The arrow. I like it. Elements section describes key concepts that are needed to understand how to use the technique. Uh, that's basically like, imagine you're actually getting the manual of how to get something done. That's practically it. Usage considerations. The usage consideration section describes the conditions under which the technique may be more or less effective. Like consider the different things that would make this technique work and not work. Perspectives are used within business analysis work to provide focus to tasks and techniques specific to the context of the initiative. Most initiatives are likely to engage one or more perspectives. The perspectives include in the BABOK guide are an agile perspective, business intelligence perspective, information technology perspective, business architecture, business process management. What the fuck are they talking about? I don't know, but we'll figure it out. One more page and the session is done. These perspectives do not presume to represent all possible perspectives from which business analysis is practiced. But of course, you're going to save your own ass. The perspectives discussed in the BABOK guide represent some of the more common views of business analysis at the time. So don't be a tool, be creative. Perspectives are not mutually exclusive, and that a given initiative might employ more than one perspective. Perspectives have the following structure: a change of scope, business analysis scope, no, change scope, scope of change, business analysis scope, methodologies, approaches, techniques, underlying competencies, impact on knowledge areas. You see how they kind of repeat themselves? Like underlying competencies. But right now, we're not actually looking at the underlying competencies of people. We're kind of like looking at the underlying competencies that are kind of like around what we're, the perspective and why it makes sense to actually look through that lens. Wow, business analysis. Change scope. The change scope section describes what parts of the enterprise the change encompasses when viewed from the perspective and to what extent it impacts both the objective and operations of the enterprise. The change scope also identifies the type of problem solved, the nature of the solutions being sought, and the approach of delivering these solutions and measuring their value. So, what is the change we're expecting, and how far we're expecting things to actually be able to change? These are basically what we're looking at right now. Business analysis scope. The business analysis scope section describes the key stakeholders, including the profile of the likely types of sponsors. So we're articulating the scope of business analysis, as in who are the people we're interacting with, what are the target stakeholders. There's the people that hired us, and then the people that are going to be using the end product. So both of them are stakeholders, and there's a lot of stakeholders in between: operations manager, project product manager, a whole lot of stuff, man. And the business analyst role within an initiative. So you are also technically a stakeholder because you're kind of like doing things as well and making things happen. It also defines likely outcomes that would be expected from business analysis work in this perspective. So the scope also like could anticipate outcomes. It actually should, because ultimately anytime you put something in front of you, then you get to like gauge whether that makes sense or whether what you're doing is making sense to it. Methodologies, approaches, and techniques. The composition of this section is unique to each perspective. In each case, it describes the methodologies, approaches, or techniques that are common and specific to the application. It's just like the outline. Like this is how this perspective worked in the past, or how we would want to do it, and how this could be applied, or something like this. Methodologies and approaches are specialized ways of undertaking the business analysis work. Techniques include the section are techniques that are not included in techniques chapter of the BABOK guide, but are especially relevant to the perspective. Wow. In this business architecture perspective, reference models are listed instead of methodologies or approaches. So basically, in the business, okay, so like in the business architecture perspective, if we're working on a business architecture of our analysis should lead to new business, should be more of a business architecture outcome, as in we're creating a new way for the business to work. Then basically our perspective should be reference models, our approaches should be reference models instead of like methodologies or approaches. In the business process management, you get it right because like who like when you're architecting a new way to do business, you can't use a method because it's very dynamic. And when it comes to approaches, man, they're opinionated, but when it comes to other businesses that kind of worked, and even if it's in the same field, just like there are a lot of things that are different. There are business cultures, protocols, and all these kind of like stuff. Ultimately, you have to consider basically what you're doing, and sometimes it's just basically using a reference is much easier than using a method that's proved to work. Underlying competencies. The underlying competencies section describes the competencies that are most prevalent in the perspective. Again, when it comes to competencies, you have to figure out, you have to kind of like decide what are the things that are most relevant for this kind of shit. The impact on knowledge areas section describes how knowledge areas are applied or modified. It also explains how specific activities within a perspective are mapped to tasks in the BABOK guide. So impact on knowledge areas is practically just describing how whatever what did they say knowledge areas were a bit? Somewhere here they said I think techniques are considered knowledge areas. All right, underlying competencies. So basically, like I think knowledge areas are basically areas where we know something and how we actually like how that knowledge applies or can actually be applied or be modified. It also explains how specific activities within a perspective are mapped to tasks. So knowledge areas kind of like explain how the things that are we're doing are mapped to the things that we want to get done, right? And they help us kind of like structure the planning phase better. That's a note here. Note. Actually, no, I could actually write Google knowledge areas when it comes to BA. So this, my babies, is what I'm going to start with next week or the next session that I have. All right. I think it's good for today. We've been doing this for an hour and 5 minutes. Fucking love you guys. Peace.